Okay, so let's start on 7.1, our implement the core logic. And in attendance, I should have already, but if for some reason I didn't cover this, put this CSS towards the bottom of your file before your media queries, and then clean up your console.log. So for me, what that looks like, and I want this to be true for you, is that right now, and actually this might be the only one you don't have, but hello from the JS app initialize and entries loaded. So what we're going to do for this assignment, and I want you to have this be set up also, is have several entries in your table. Therefore also that is from your local storage that is in your in memory right now. Okay, so we know that's true because they're rendering it. Is it only from the carbon footprint global array of objects that we render the table? Local storage, we just go get that and set up that in memory. So what we're going to do today is start the coding of the delete, but we're not going to handle the UI, the user interface yet. We're just going to handle the logic itself. So let's think about how we do this, and we're going to learn some new JavaScript functionality along the way. So for this one, after you clean up your console logs, then go ahead and put at the top of the file, now supporting deleting entries from the table. But like I said, before we can do that, we actually have to delete it in memory. And so we're going to, and in this case, the question would be, where do we do this? Well, it shouldn't be a complete shock, because last time I had you start writing the handle entry just from the basics function itself. And now in here, writing this, just setting this up, may had you start thinking about, so we're going to handle the delete functionality in the app.js. And it might, if you're thinking that doesn't make sense, maybe based on the fact that we have a storage.js, we have a table renderer.js, that would be a logical question. And it's okay if you didn't think about it. But in this case, the reason it's not, and I actually ended up having a whole discussion with Gemini, Google Gemini, about this, is understanding why. In this case, they suggested this pattern. And then the idea is that the app.js is coordinating, and I probably will have covered most of this under the attendance. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and start coding here. But there's a reason why we're going to actually have the logic here, and then we'll actually call it from table render. So now the question is, once we start doing this, since it's going to be called over here and we just want to test this function, where would we call this function? Because right now this function is only, set up, it's declared, it's assigned because we've given it a name, but it's not run anywhere. And in my case, you're like, well, Rio, yours was run. And so that's when it starts making you think about, okay, what do I need for this to run? What do I need to have access to for this to run? Well, in this case, and I'm just giving you the heads up, you need to have access to the carbon footprint entries right here, and that's done in our init. Again, I'm assuming here a new page, like you've refreshed the page. So after the check for, if there is length on grabbing out of local storage, and we're pushing using the spread operator, now we're going to actually, now we can run this function itself. So now we have to think about, what does this function need? Well, it needs an ID. So we'll come back around to that in a minute, but now that we know we're going to need an ID, how do we then, based on the ID, start the process of deleting? Well, we're going to use a new method that we have not implemented in this course called findIndex. So it's perfect for what we're looking for, because it's the method used to, and it's an array method, okay, to find the index of the first element in an array that satisfies a proven testing function. Okay. Now, if it finds it, it's going to return the index. Remember, all the objects in the array, right, are just objects and items in an array that have an index. So it starts with 0, and it goes up to whatever the length of the array is. Actually, it's not the length, it's just the index of however many we have. If it doesn't find that index, then it returns 1. And so what we can do is after we've run this, we can actually use the returned value, whether it's the index or the -1, to then write logic to do the next thing we'll need to do, which is a splice. But we'll cover that in a minute. Back here, okay? So again, we're not actually coding this button yet. We're just coding the logic that this button will use. But in the case that we're in here, we have, matter of fact, I have, and I want you to have the same several entries in your local storage, and therefore in your in-memory, okay, for your carbon footprint. Okay, and I would say at least 5. So just if you want to go through and enter stuff, or just hit calculate so that you have them. And so in this case, right, notice that each one, of course, has, and if I was to try to find this one, its index, its unique ID is this, okay, and its index is 4. So how do I find this one? So what I'm going to do is write that method, okay, and I know that I'm going to pass this, that index number that I said was number 4. Uh-oh. Okay. Oh, I see what I did. It was here. So once I get this done, this will call it passing this unique ID into my function. So now in this function, let's write this code to find that. And if it can't find it, give us either the -1 says you can't, and the index says you found it, and here it is. So we're going to set up a local variable in this function we're called, and which makes sense, index to delete, okay, is going to be equal to, and because we're calling a method on an array, we have to specify our method, which would be carbon footprint entries, dot, the method is called find index, and now this find index is actually a method that takes in a function. So we call this a callback function. Okay, so so what it does, like we've written loops and we actually loop over something, this is actually doing something but at a higher level. And what it's doing is it's running this callback for each, right, for each one in this array of objects. So we know that each item in the array is an object. And we could now we reference whatever each of them, as it iterates over, what are we, because we need to run the test, we have to give this a variable. And again, this is anything we want to give it. And I'm going to call it entry. But remember, this is only scoped into here, okay? So now, every one of them, right, and I could console log out every one of them right now, okay? And I could say entry. Now, I actually haven't written the test, though. All I've done here is I've just said, hey, show me the entry. And it may, let's see what it does. Yeah, so it actually shows me down here each entry, right? So 103, which is my console log, that line 103, actually outputs every one of these, okay? Which is good to know what each one of them represents because it's an item in the array that happens to be an object. So now we want to do our test. I'm going to say return. Now return is ultimately what gets stored in here. Okay, so when it runs this and if it gets all the way through our array, doesn't find it, then it returns -1. But if it does find it, it gives us the index. So we're going to say entry.id. Think about that, right? So that's an object. On the object is an ID. Now, if you do equals here, remember in JavaScript, equals isn't a sign. So this can be a common mistake that you might make. And this will throw your code off because it's like it's going to set that entry to whatever you're passing it. What you want to do is say, does it equal? Does it strictly equal both from a data type and from its actual value? Is it strictly equal to what I passed it? And in that case, if it finds it, right, it's going to return to us the index as this variable. So we could just console log out, okay, that index to delete. So now just with this code, look here, we now see 4, 4. Now again, this is going to be unique for your environment. Do not use the number I provided. If you use the number I provided, my number is not going to equal your specific number because these were created with timestamps. And I'm doing this over summer. You're doing this during the semester, and this is why I want you to do this for your specific instance here. Okay, so use anything but the first index, because I want you to see that it actually searches through here, and it goes to each one. Now this is it passing, and I could actually, let's do another one. Let's do in this case, let's do this one. Okay, so I'm going to grab this value, and it is okay that it's a string because the find index could also handle strings. So I'm going to give it now number 5, and good, it already found it. Okay, and it actually showed me based on the console log which one I passed it. So in your code, make sure you have this. But now that's only the first step. This is actually like us doing this right here, right? And this is why I want you to grab this, right? And this is how we test. I just showed you this. So we're going to find the index. Okay, so this is our first step. We're finding the index of the entry to delete in our in-memory array carbon footprint that has been populated by grabbing local storage. Now that we have this, what do? Okay, so now we're going to ask if, because remember, it's either going to return an index or it's going to return a -1. -1 says that, hey, I didn't find it. Okay, so I'm going to say if, and this is a truthy value, it resolves to if this, right, to index, actually no, it's not truthy in this case, sorry, we're doing actually a comparison here. If it's not equal to -1, which means it found an index, which is awesome. So if it found an index, we're gonna delete it with this splice method that we'll write in a minute. But let's just go ahead and write the else, because if it doesn't find it, what are we gonna do? Right? We're gonna say, hey, console.log didn't find or did not find, right, index. And then we'll do something else. Matter of fact, we'll probably end up doing this for both, because, and even though for this instance, actually you will ultimately be doing, and that's why we have this in here, you will be doing UI state resets. So we'll leave that here for now. But so I just want you to see this stamped out, because if it's true, so this is I found it, right? So in our case right now, it found it. Its index is 5. Now what do? Now I use this method, which is the splice method, right? To say, okay, give me the, based on the array, splice, and in this case there's multiple different arguments we can pass it. But in our case, we're going to say, okay, let's just write it and then we'll come back around and talk about it, because that example, when you first look at it, can be a little confusing, but that's okay. Okay, so let's do this. Let's say carbon foot, so that's our array dot splice, okay, is the method. And we're going to say to index, so and this is going to start, so here where it was saying, right, so this could be between, right, so at 4, right, actually this is a better example. What's that second argument? I got to remember. All right, here it is, right? So how many do you want to delete? Okay, so this is actually, we're going to start here, and our delete count is 1. So our first argument we're passing is we're starting at the index that we gave it, and then we're going to do comma 1. In other words, just delete 1 entry. Okay, so this code actually deletes it out of our in-memory, right? And then let's just do a console.log to tell us, hey, entry removed from memory, okay? And then just so we know, hey, that's what happened here. And now that we have that, now we have to do the corresponding, because it exists here in memory, but it also exists in storage. And the nice thing is we already have this method, right, to save the local storage. So we would do storage, that method, dot, save entries, and now we're going to pass it our newly updated or removed, spliced, meaning took out that index and only took out that one index. Again, this splice has much more many more ways you can handle the way you delete data, because this is a very common thing you would want to do in JavaScript and really any programming languages to manipulate this array. Okay, so first we're going to call that, which is going to update our storage. But now we're also going to call table render dot renderer, right? So that module, table render, render table, and we're going to pass it our carbon footprint entries. Okay, because they are now newly updated. So they're saved to storage, and now, hey, output them for us. Okay. Now, at this point, let's just see if it actually does, and mine will probably already have done it, okay, because of live reload. Guess what happened? Why did I get this? Because it ran multiple times. And notice I had 8 here before, so let's use another one. Okay, so let me go for this one. So now I'm going to come over here, and it's going to go, matter of fact, I need to actually set a breakpoint. Let's do this so I can actually see it work. See it do its work. Okay, so let's actually right here, we'll just set a breakpoint right here. Okay, so just so it stops and we can see it work once we update in our init that ID. Okay, cool. So now it stopped right there. Okay, so there is our new ID that we passed. Okay, now it's going to, let's bring this over so we can see the whole thing go. Okay, so it's looking in here. It's looking at the first one, looking at the second one, third one, and it's not outputting, but notice I have to hit step each time. And when it has its test case that it finds it, right, we're almost there. Oh, it found it. Yeah, now it said, okay, it's 6. Now, it says if this is not equal, strictly not equal to -1, which we know it's not, it's 6, then we're going to run this code. So then right here, now we're going to go splice, right? So there's 8. So now we're going to actually run the splice. And when we do that, then there's 6. Now we're going to save our local storage. Okay, so we could go look at local storage here. We could go to the application, right? Because right now there's still 7. Okay, I want to slow down because this is important to understand what you're doing here, or what our code is doing more importantly. Okay, so once we run this, okay, now we're going to actually do a new, now we're running this method that we've run before, which takes our key and it stringifies it, updates, so we see save to our local storage, and now we're back here, and if we look at our local storage, we will now see we have 6. Okay, I hope that helps, and again, do this on your own machine, and you will need to, because part of the way I will grade this one is, did you use IDs that were specific to you? Did you do that? Because this is what you want to do. You want to actually see your code run. Okay. So now that we did that, right, now we're actually just going to go redo the table, and now we have one less. And we could do this for, right, another one and another one. Do it for several so that you see it. Okay, and let's make sure I have all the content here. All right, so let's do this. We then removed, right, so up here, let's go back up to our delete, right. So then right here, this, remove the entry from in-memory array using splice. Okay, we saved the modify smaller array back to local storage. Okay, because it is now right. So we do it here because that's what's done here. Save that smaller one. Re-render the table. Okay, which is done here. Okay. Right now we're going to do some more here, right? And this now, and I think actually I will pick this up on the next one, because what we're about to do now is we've now written the satisfying the first thing I wanted to do, which is just to write that core functionality for the delete. And now we have that, but we're calling it from our init. And now on the next one, we actually want to know how to pass this function, okay, the reference to this function into our table render, so we let it actually call the delete based on the user clicking, because right now the way we're running it won't work for the kind of interaction we want to have, but it does allow us to test that. Okay, let me see. Not this one, because the things you want to research is, yeah, how does find index work, and are there alternatives? And there are. How does splice work, and show me different ways to do it, right? And what do we should be, why do we need to use callbacks? And actually these two we'll handle next. Okay, I'll modify this by the time you see it. We'll pick you up on the next one.